When a TV show's on the air for a really long time, there's bound to be some controversies with actors, producers, or anything from behind the scenes. Doctor Who's been going for 60 years now, and to be fair, has remained relatively unscathed by major controversy. Especially when compared to shows like Community, Glee, or even the original Star Trek, which all had a variety of difficult leading actors, writing problems, and even racism going on behind the scenes. That being said, it's not like Doctor Who has a perfect record. It has a pretty good record, but it's not squeaky clean. So, in this video, I'm going to be looking at some of the show's biggest and silliest dramas and controversies. There are some slightly heavier topics in this video, so I wanted to start out with something that in comparison is pretty silly and funny in hindsight given the outrage at the time. The Graham Norton controversies. I don't know about you, but I love Graham Norton. If you're not familiar, he's an Irish actor and presenter, host of The Graham Norton Show, Eurovision Song Contest, as well as a load of other presentery and radio things here in the UK. Back in 2010, Graham Norton was the host of a TV show called Over the Rainbow, which saw hopeful people compete for a chance to star as Dorothy in Andrew Lloyd Webber's new production of The Wizard of Oz, making them an overnight West End star. How does this relate to Doctor Who? Well, also airing in 2010 was Doctor Who's 5th season, and on the 24th of April 2010, the episode The Time of Angels was broadcast. This episode was the first in a two-part story that saw the Doctor, Amy, and River Song all stuck on a planet with a load of weak but angry weeping angels. At the end of the episode, our characters appear to be trapped, and there's a big cliffhanger with swelling music and a big dramatic speech by the Doctor, who even shoots a gun. A really exciting end to the episode that left most viewers wondering how the Doctor and co would make it out for another adventure next week. That is, unless you were watching the episode in some parts of England specifically, where you'd be distracted by an animated promo for the Graham Norton hosted Over the Rainbow playing during the episode's final pivotal moments. As audiences were glued to their screens, focusing on the Doctor and the intensity of the moment, here comes animated Graham Norton getting hit in the bum by an ad for his Wizard of Oz show. And fans were livid. It was all over social media, the BBC released an official apology, and as revealed by Graham Norton himself during the next episode of The Graham Norton Show, over 5,000 people called to complain.
5,000 people called in afterwards. They love me.
Graham Norton, the person, obviously had no control in the animated promo appearing during Doctor Who, and he played it off pretty well on his show, apologising to fans for ruining the episode's final moments, before making it up to us by having the same animated promo appear, only this time with a Dalek also appearing and exterminating him. I bet most people don't really remember this now, which is why it's so funny to me that people were so mad at the time. It's a simple little mistake that was never included in any repeats or home media releases of the episode. Also, shout out to BBC One Wales for not ruining the end of this episode for me when I watched it as a kid. Tidy. What makes this even weirder is it's not actually the first time a broadcast error featuring Graham Norton specifically occurred in Doctor Who either, as in 2005 there was a different error in the first ever episode of New Who, Rose. During the segment where Rose is looking for Wilson near the start of the episode, Wilson? You can hear cheering and weird audio for almost the entire 2-minute scene, ending with,
I'm on the sofa, I'm on the main out there.
Somehow, during the broadcast of this episode, they accidentally had audio from BBC's Strictly Come Dancing play on top of Doctor Who, resulting in Graham Norton's voice being heard asking where he's supposed to be sitting, somewhat ruining the creepy vibes of the episode in the process.
If I had a nickel for every time
Graham Norton interrupted Doctor Who,
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
The cool thing is that this weird audio bug was then actually added into the official novelisation of Rose written by Russell T Davies, where it said that Rose could faintly hear a radio with an Irish comedian on it as she's walking through and looking for Wilson, indirectly referring to Graham Norton himself and adding this weird little error into the actual story. Ain't that cool? After looking at a fairly silly minor controversy, it's time to take a look at possibly the most recent major controversy involving Doctor Who, the Huw Edwards Scandal. Huw Edwards joined the BBC as a news trainee in 1984 and worked his way up to become the host of the BBC's 10 o'clock news for almost a decade, covering a variety of news and important UK events for many years after, like royal weddings and that sort of thing, and he was even the first person to present on the death of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022. How does any of this relate to Doctor Who? Well, in the Season 2 episode Fear Her from 2006, the Doctor and Rose arrive on a suburban street on the 2012 London Olympics opening day and help stop an alien that's possessing a little girl and causing all kinds of mayhem. Because of his notoriety when it came to presenting news and current events, in this episode of Doctor Who, Huw Edwards basically played himself as the in-universe host of the BBC's Olympic coverage, and can be heard multiple times presenting the Olympics whenever seen on TV. At the end of the episode, there's an entire extended segment where we see the BBC Olympic coverage and Huw Edwards is narrating everything that happens, as the Doctor takes the Olympic torch and runs it to the end of the ceremony.
It's more than a flame now, Bob. It's more than heat and light. It's hope, and it's courage, and it's love.
For many years, this was nothing more than an incredibly cringy speech and cheesy ending to a pretty light episode that was mostly forgettable and unimportant, so the world moved on. That was until 2023, when it was first reported that Huw Edwards had been paying more than £35,000 for indecent images, and then in 2024 that he had solicited more than 350 sexual images via WhatsApp, 41 of which featured, some of whom were under the age of. This all came to a head in 2024 when at court Huw Edwards pleaded guilty to 3 counts of making indecent images of. He was never jailed and sentenced to a shockingly short 6-month suspended sentence, alongside some fines and stuff like that. Following this, in August of 2024, the Doctor Who episode Fear Her was quietly pulled from BBC iPlayer without a word being said about it. But given the prominent role that Huw Edwards played in the episode, it didn't take long for people to realise why. As it's a voice role only, most people are assuming that the voice of commentator, as listed in the credits, will be recast, re-recorded, and the episode will be re-uploaded in due time. Though we have no idea when that will be. So for now, if you're looking to rewatch Season 2 of Doctor Who on iPlayer, you'll notice a strange gap between episodes 10 and 12. Because Huw Edwards is a It's also currently unavailable on Amazon Prime, but it is available on Apple TV+. So if you've never seen it and you feel like you really need to see this episode, fill your boots, but honestly, you don't. You don't. I don't really think anyone can argue it was a bad move removing the episode entirely. As I mentioned before, it's mostly inconsequential to the rest of the season and the storyline at large, and it is also the worst rated episode of the whole of Season 2. So for the time being, it's no real loss. Moving on from a heavier topic, let's take a detour to look at some of the many minor kissing controversies in Doctor Who's history. To start with, the Doctor kissing or getting kissed by people in general. Some classic Who fans, and even classic Doctor actors, absolutely hate the fact that the Doctor is now quite often giving or getting some lovin' by companions or others in a story since the show came back in 2005. As the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and now 15th Doctors have all had a kiss or 3 apiece. But during Classic Who, there were strict rules against this. No hanky-panky in the TARDIS was the motto, and from the 5th Doctor onwards especially, the Doctor was more or less portrayed as not having any interest in that sort of thing at all, thank you very much.
Because I was a younger Doctor, the producer had a terrible fear that people might think there was hanky-panky going on in the TARDIS.
That was until the dashing 8th Doctor came along in the 1996 TV movie and kissed his companion for the story, Grace Holloway, as they were saying their goodbyes at the end. Apparently this was incredibly controversial at the time, as silly as that sounds, but a lot of people hated it big time and saw it as a massive departure for the Doctor as a character. Not my Doctor Who, they probably said. Not everyone hated it though, including Russell T Davies, and when he brought the show back in 2005 for a modern generation of storytelling, it was now Kiss City. Population? Doctor. 9 kisses Rose, probably that tree woman off screen, and gets kissed by Jack. 10 kisses Rose, Martha, Donna, and like 100 other people. 11 gets kissed by Amy, kisses Craig, Rory, Jenny. And 12 gets a big ol' smooch from Missy. Paul McGann recently made some jokey comments blaming the 10th Doctor for all the kissing, but who's he trying to fool? He did it first and opened the floodgates. We see you, 8. Half human on your mother's side, son of a... This is another one that's kind of funny to look back on after almost 20 years of New Who, as now as an audience we're quite comfortable seeing the Doctor sharing some love with another person. The best example being River Song, who's now a fan favourite character. Or more recently with the 15th Doctor and Rogue, which itself unfortunately had a lot of negative reception due to the fact it was a same-sex kiss. Aliens and time travel is believable, but some gay dudes ruin the reality of it for you. Oh okay, cool, you sound reasonable. There were also complaints in 2014 during the 12th Doctor's first episode, Deep Breath, when the characters of Jenny and her lizard wife share a kiss as explained in the story to share oxygen. People were upset because, you guessed it, it's 2 women, even though one of them was a lizard. People are strange sometimes. And for the final kissing controversy, it's back to the 11th Doctor for a moment. I said earlier that he kissed Jenny and there was a very subtle alarm that went off, I don't know if you noticed it, because Jenny, as I just mentioned, is married to the Lizard Woman, and a lesbian, and a friend of the Doctor's, who knows she's married to the Lizard Woman, who is also his friend. The reason given to this kiss by the fandom is that the Doctor has just been cured of the crimson whatever and is now overflowing with energy and gratitude, so he kisses Jenny out of thanks. But it's still a weird choice for the Doctor's character in that moment, and it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way about the 11th Doctor, with some fans viewing this action as assault. After being kissed, she slaps him and then they're immediately friends again and the episode goes on like normal and nothing happened. It comes really kind of out of nowhere, and in the behind the scenes of the episode, it looks like this was actually added by Matt Smith on the day to spice up the scene a bit, which would kind of explain why it makes no sense, as it wasn't actually written for the episode. Moving on to the final controversy of this video, and probably the most well known of recent years, let's take a look at the fall of John Barrowman. As I'm sure you know already, if a fan of Doctor Who, John Barrowman joined the show during the first season of New Who in 2005 as fan favourite character Captain Jack Harkness. Jack's a suave and mysterious time agent introduced in the two-part episodes The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances, before he joins Nine and Rose as a companion for the final episodes of the season where he dies fighting some Daleks like a hero. He's then brought back to life immediately, and because of his popularity, gets his own spin-off in Torchwood, which runs for an eventual 5 seasons. Jack returns to Doctor Who for the last 3 episodes of Season 3, he comes back again for the last 2 episodes of Season 4, and then comes back again in the 2021 New Year's special, Revolution of the Daleks. It's hard to deny that Captain Jack Harkness is a great character with almost a 20-year legacy of his own who almost all of the fandom love. But unfortunately, the same can't be said for John Barrowman. It was basically an open secret that John Barrowman had a strange habit of flashing his Little John on the set of both Doctor Who and Torchwood during the 2005 to 2009-ish period. He's always said it was only ever meant to just be for pranks and funsies, but it was so frequent and normalised that it's even referenced in this musical parody starring David Tennant, Catherine Tate and John Barrowman himself that was made to celebrate RTD and Julie Gardner's run as they were leaving the show at the end of 2009. It's a really funny video and well worth a watch, so I'll link it below, but it features this line in particular that I bet now John Barrowman wishes he hadn't included.
I can't block out, please lock out, images of Johnny B getting his out.
With John Barrowman even winking to the camera after the line is said. This isn't even alleged, it was just a constant occurrence on Doctor Who and Torchwood, where he was somewhat protected from consequence as a top-billed actor, especially on Torchwood where he was the lead. But to make matters even worse for himself, he also genuinely got his Little John out in the middle of a live BBC Radio 1 broadcast in late 2008 while on as a guest. As it was a radio show, only the people in the room at the time would have seen it, and I've tried to find the audio, but I'm guessing it's been scrubbed from the archives, so this is what happened. In the show, hosted by Nick Grimshaw and Annie Mac, he's asked directly about his habit of exposing himself on set. After some back and forth banter, John Barrowman responded by saying he would get it out right then and there, before doing just that, resulting in screams and laughter from the two hosts. A little later in the show, he clarified, "I didn't take the whole thing out, but I got my fruit and nuts out." That sounds like taking the whole thing out to me, unless he has more fruit and more nuts that I don't know about. Both the BBC and John Barrowman released an official apology for this, with the latter agreeing he went too far before saying it would never happen again. Former companion Noel Clarke, who played Mickey Smith, and someone with a whole host of allegations of his own that we'll cover in another video, said this about John Barrowman's on-set behaviour in this quite hard to watch 2015 con footage.
And Barrowman's there taking his out every 5 seconds. Every 5 seconds, just hitting it on everything like that.
With even the wonderful actress Annette Badland immediately jumping in and saying yes, as she would have filmed with John Barrowman on the set of Doctor Who for the episode Boomtown. Former companion Freema Agyeman, who played Martha Jones in both Doctor Who and Torchwood, said, "John will walk about with his chap hanging out, having conversations with people. Everyone would just be talking to him normally, and it would only be the new people, such as myself, that would be freaked out." Once again, and as always, Martha deserved better. Julie Gardner later confirmed that John Barrowman had been reprimanded over his behaviour on the set of Torchwood and said it would no longer be tolerated, at which point he allegedly did stop this strange behaviour. This all resurfaced in 2021, where after the cultural lens had shifted and this behaviour was no longer seen as just messing about, Barrowman was swiftly fired from his role as a judge on ITV's Dancing on Ice under the guise of sexual misconduct for his time on Doctor Who and Torchwood. I mean, it's not a great look having a person with that kind of reputation as a judge on one of ITV's flagship family-viewed shows. As well as losing his position of judge on the show, John Barrowman also cancelled his 2023 tour, citing poor sales due to the scandal, though it looks like he's touring this year and next year, so maybe it's going better for him. Since his cancellation, John Barrowman has issued countless apologies, and his main justification is that it was just a different time back then, when such actions were deemed okay.
It was amongst a group of people who were like a family. We were being silly, outrageous. I wouldn't do any of it now, but nobody was harmed, nobody complained, nobody was upset. The only people who were the cancel culture who weren't there.
But what I think he isn't realising is that just because people were going along with it doesn't mean they were actually comfortable with it or okay with it. He was in a position of power, especially as the lead in Torchwood, so I imagine most people wouldn't want to bring it up for fear of losing their jobs and instead stayed complacent and dealt with it as best they could. Some fans have defended John Barrowman by saying it was clearly only fun and games and was honest tomfoolery, and are still begging for his return to Doctor Who. But personally, even ignoring this controversy, after his last appearance as the character, it just made me a bit sad. And obviously this isn't his fault, but the character's supposed to remain mostly ageless, and John Barrowman has aged a lot since his initial appearance. So to me, it would only really make sense to bring Jack back if he was like 2 million years older or something that would explain his aged look. But at that point, if the character still acted like the Jack we knew and loved, then that means his character has had zero growth in all that time, and it would just cheapen it anyway, so what's the point? I think we can leave Jack in the past. Anyway, that was a brief look into some minor and major Doctor Who controversies. Please let me know what you think of these in the comments, and please suggest any other controversies that you'd like to see covered in future videos. This started because my brother and I were talking about Fear Her being removed from iPlayer the other day, and it got me thinking, which got me writing this video, so I hope you enjoyed. I'm still working on some longer video essay type stuff, but they've all taken around 3 to 5 months to finish so far, so in an effort to keep uploads semi-regular, I thought I'd make some smaller videos to help lighten the load, discussing topics I didn't really want to dedicate a massive amount of time to on their own. I'd also like to give a very huge, very big, massive thank you to my patrons Ruben Williamson and Lil Seahorse. I appreciate you both so much, and I'm eternally grateful for your support, and it means just so much. Thank you very much. Thank you guys, you're pretty cool, I love you. High five. If you'd also like to support me and be added to the end of my videos, then please consider doing so on Patreon, linked below. Thank you, have a great day, bye.
I'm the Golden Goose.